The alien girl mocked the human, then discovered the secret of his. Towering mountains spiraled into the clouds, and the air carried a scent that was almost sweet, almost metallic. For most beings in the galaxy, Viridian was both beautiful and dangerous. Only the bravest explorers dared set foot on its surface. Lyra, a young alien cadet, had grown up hearing stories of Viridian's challenges. She was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Her eyes were a bright violet, almost glowing, and they seemed to see through everything around her. She prided herself on her intelligence, her skill, and her confidence. Lyra was quick to judge, and even quicker to mock anyone who seemed weaker than her. Today, she was not alone. Standing beside her was a human, Ethan, sent as an ambassador from Earth. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Most aliens considered them fragile, slow, and unremarkable. Lyra had already formed her opinion. "You're supposed to be the great human ambassador?" Lyra asked, her tone dripping with disbelief. She tilted her head and studied Ethan as if he were an insect in a jar. "You look normal, small. I expected someone taller, stronger, more impressive." Ethan smiled politely. "I may not look like much," he said, "but I hope to show you that humans can be useful." Lyra laughed, a sound sharp and musical echoing across the rocky plateau. "Useful? You? I've seen Academy cadets handle situations far better than you could." She shook her head and waved her hand dismissively. "This is going to be amusing." The other cadets nearby snickered, enjoying her ridicule. Humans were unusual visitors, and the chance to watch one fumble in alien territory was too good to pass up. But Ethan remained calm. There was no hint of anger, no trace of embarrassment. He simply adjusted his pack and looked around at the alien landscape, studying the jagged peaks and the glimmering crystals with careful attention. Lyra narrowed her eyes. There was something strange about him. "You're not scared?" she asked, a little surprised. Ethan's lips curved into a gentle smile. "No, curiosity beats fear most of the time." Lyra blinked. She had expected humans to be timid, anxious, or clumsy. Instead, this one seemed collected, almost confident. That was a first. Their mission for the day was simple in description but dangerous in execution. They were to traverse the Crystal Plateau, a series of rocky ridges dotted with volatile energy crystals, to retrieve samples for study. Many explorers had come here before, but not all returned. The crystals were fragile but highly reactive. A wrong step could trigger an energy surge strong enough to knock even the largest alien unconscious. Lyra's eyes gleamed. "I hope you can keep up," she said. "If you fall behind, you'll slow me down." Ethan nodded. "I'll do my best." The first steps across the plateau were cautious. The crystals hummed beneath their feet, and the ground occasionally trembled. Lyra moved with practiced agility, leaping over jagged rocks and landing lightly on the crystals, barely disturbing them. She expected Ethan to struggle, to trip, or to panic, but he walked steadily, his eyes scanning the terrain, his movements careful yet confident. You're moving differently," Lyra muttered, almost to herself. "How are you?" Ethan caught her gaze and smiled. "I pay attention. Sometimes that makes all the difference." Lyra's pride bristled at the compliment. No human should be able to match her skill, and yet he did. She forced herself to focus, to ignore the rising curiosity in her chest. As they progressed, a sudden tremor shook the plateau. A cluster of crystals cracked violently beneath their feet, sending shards flying. Lyra leapt instinctively, landing safely. She glanced back to see Ethan pivot, duck, and roll in a fluid motion that was surprisingly precise. He avoided the shards completely, landing lightly beside her. "You didn't get hit," Lyra exclaimed, a mix of shock and disbelief in her voice. Ethan shrugged. "A bit of luck and careful observation," he said. There was no arrogance in his tone, only calm acceptance. The day continued, each step testing their reflexes and coordination. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air became, making every movement more exhausting. Yet Ethan did not complain. He observed the crystals, noted their weak points, and carefully chose his path. Lyra began to see something she had not noticed before. Humans were patient. They did not rely on brute strength. They thought. They adapted. By midday, they reached a narrow ledge overlooking a deep chasm. The energy crystals below glowed brighter, casting eerie shadows across their faces. Lyra's violet eyes flicked down nervously. She had always respected heights, but even she knew that a fall here would be fatal. Ethan stepped to the edge, studying the gap. He pointed to a series of smaller rocks that formed a precarious bridge. If we move carefully, we can cross without disturbing the crystals below, he said. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You're confident about that? I think we can do it, he replied. Lyra bit her lip. She wanted to mock him, to say it was impossible, but something in his calm, deliberate voice made her pause. With a huff, she muttered, Fine, let's see if you can actually do it. One by one, they crossed the bridge. Lyra's tail twitched in surprise as Ethan's precise movements allowed him to balance perfectly on the narrow stones. He never rushed, never stumbled. Even when a small crystal quivered beneath his foot, he shifted his weight just enough to keep steady. When they reached the other side safely, Lyra exhaled sharply. I didn't expect that, she admitted, though her pride made the words sound like a whisper. Ethan smiled, not in arrogance, but in quiet acknowledgement. You just have to take your time and observe. Rushing usually makes things worse. Lyra's violet eyes studied him carefully. There was more to this human than met the eye. He was not the weak, fragile creature she had assumed. Something about him, unusual, almost remarkable, made her curiosity grow. They set up a small rest area near the crystals, eating the ration packs they carried. Lyra tried to ignore the strange feeling in her chest, the curiosity that made her watch Ethan more closely than ever before. He talked softly about Earth, a planet Lyra had only seen in holograms, describing oceans, forests, and mountains. He spoke with passion and wonder, as if he had learned lessons from every experience. You talk about your world like it's a place of wonders, Lyra said, almost teasingly. I thought humans were only survivors, not explorers or adventurers, Ethan chuckled. Humans are survivors, yes, but we also adapt. And sometimes adapting means learning to see things others cannot, Lyra frowned. See things others cannot, she asked, intrigued despite herself. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He only smiled and gazed at the shimmering crystals. Some things are not about strength or technology. Sometimes it's about noticing what's happening before it happens, about understanding patterns and using them. Lyra felt a strange tension in her chest. She did not understand fully, but she sensed that he possessed something valuable, a strength invisible to most eyes. She wanted to mock him again, but no words came. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the plateau, Lyra realized that this human might be unlike any being she had ever met. And for the first time, she felt a spark of genuine curiosity, mixed with a strange respect. The day ended with them setting up camp near a cluster of glowing crystals. The night air was cold, but Ethan's calm presence was steadying. Lyra lay on her mat, staring at the stars above. For the first time in her life, she wondered what humans could truly do when they were underestimated, ignored, or mocked. She did not yet know the full secret, but something told her that the coming days would change everything. And in that moment, Lyra, the alien girl who had mocked the human, realized that she had only begun to understand the depth of his abilities. The morning sun broke over the jagged peaks of Viridian, casting golden streaks across the crystal plateau. Lyra stretched, her long limbs moving gracefully, and glanced at Ethan. The human was already awake, sitting cross-legged beside their small camp, studying a small map of the plateau. You're up early, Lyra said, trying not to sound impressed. Most humans sleep in the mornings. Or is that just Earth stories? Ethan looked up, smiling faintly. I like to start early. The crystals are unpredictable, and it's better to be prepared than rushed. Lyra blinked. There was a hint of pride in her chest, though she refused to admit it. Humans were unusual. They did not panic, even when the ground beneath them could shatter with a single misstep. After a quick meal of protein bars and nutrient gels, they packed their equipment. Today's mission was more dangerous than yesterday's. They were to retrieve the Lumina crystal, a rare energy source hidden in the Cavern of Echoes, a network of tunnels within the mountains. Many explorers had tried before, and many had failed. Some had returned, scarred and shaken. Lyra moved first, her feet barely making a sound on the crystal-studded ground. Ethan followed, careful yet precise, matching her pace. He did not rush, but he did not lag either. Lyra found herself studying his movements closely. Unlike most aliens, humans did not rely solely on strength or speed. Instead, Ethan moved with observation, intuition, and calculation. Careful here, Ethan said, pointing to a cluster of unstable crystals. Step lightly or they'll shatter. Lyra smirked. You're slow, she teased, but at least you're not stupid, Ethan chuckled. Slow and careful can be better than fast and reckless. As they approached the entrance to the Cavern of Echoes, the wind picked up, carrying a faint humming sound. The crystals resonated, vibrating with energy. Lyra shivered slightly. Few aliens dared to enter the cavern without protective gear, but she had grown confident in her abilities. She waved Ethan forward. Inside, the cavern was dark, lit only by the faint glow of luminescent crystals embedded in the walls. The tunnels twisted and turned, creating an almost labyrinthine maze. Every step echoed, every movement amplified in the still air. Lyra led the way, using her knowledge of crystal formations to guide them through the safer paths. Ethan followed silently, observing every detail. His eyes flicked to the smallest cracks in the walls, the slightest shifts in the crystals, and even the patterns of light on the floor. It was as if he could read the cavern itself, predicting dangers before they appeared. "Why are you so quiet?" Lyra finally asked, breaking the silence. "Humans usually talk to pass the time." Ethan shook his head. "Noise can be dangerous here, every sound travels, and besides," he paused, eyes scanning the tunnel ahead, "I like to listen. It tells you things you might not notice otherwise." Lyra frowned. She had not realized it, but she found herself trusting his instincts. Humans were small, but their perception was sharp, perhaps sharper than many of her own kind. The path narrowed, forcing them to crouch. A faint shimmer of light appeared ahead, the first sign that the Lumina crystal might be near. Lyra's heart raced. She had been trained to find these crystals, but the cavern was tricky. Many had failed because they underestimated the environment. Suddenly, a tremor shook the tunnel. Small rocks fell from above, and the ground vibrated violently. Lyra leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding a falling shard. Ethan, reacting instantly, rolled and grabbed onto a ledge, steadying himself. The crystals around them began to glow brighter, responding to the movement of the earth. "Careful," Lyra shouted, her voice echoing. "This section is unstable." Ethan's gaze scanned the walls and floor. "There's a safer path on the left. Follow me." Lyra hesitated for a moment. She usually trusted only herself in dangerous situations, but something about Ethan's calm, precise instructions made her pause. She followed him, stepping carefully onto the path he indicated. The ground was uneven, the crystals beneath their feet unstable. But Ethan's predictions were correct. Every step they took avoided collapse, avoiding traps that could have been fatal. Lyra's pride fought against her growing respect, but she could not deny the human's skill. As they moved deeper into the cavern, the walls began to close in. The glow from the crystals dimmed and the air grew colder. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had trained for this. She knew the dangers, yet even she felt a twinge of unease. "Stay close," she warned, her voice low. "One wrong step and the tunnel could collapse." Ethan nodded, his expression calm. "I've got you." The path led them to a massive chamber, larger than anything Lyra had expected. In the center floated the Lumina crystal, radiating a soft blue light. Its energy hummed in harmony with the crystals around it, creating a melody that seemed almost alive. Lyra stepped forward, eyes fixed on the crystal. She had studied these for years, yet seeing one in person was always breathtaking. "Stay alert," she whispered. "The chamber can be unstable. We need to move carefully." Ethan nodded, taking out a small scanning device. He moved around the chamber slowly, observing patterns in the light, noting the shifts in energy. "The crystal is sensitive," he said. "Any sudden movement could trigger a reaction." Lyra's eyes widened. Humans could sense things. She had never noticed it before, but Ethan's ability to read the environment was remarkable. She realized that strength was not the only form of power. Observation, patience, and intuition were equally valuable. They began their careful approach to the crystal. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. Lyra led the way, but Ethan's insights guided them. When a small crystal beneath Lyra cracked, Ethan grabbed her arm, steadying her just in time. "You're careful," Lyra said, almost in awe. Ethan smiled. "It's better than being reckless." As they reached the Lumina crystal, a sudden tremor shook the chamber violently. Crystals fell from the ceiling, and the energy hum intensified. Lyra froze for a moment, her instincts telling her to leap aside, but Ethan acted first. He grabbed a fallen crystal shard and used it to stabilize a section of the floor, creating a safe path. "Follow me," he shouted, guiding her through the danger. They reached the crystal safely. Ethan carefully detached a small fragment using specialized tools, ensuring the main structure remained intact. Lyra watched in amazement. The human had not only survived, but had done so with precision and skill. When the task was complete, they retreated from the chamber. Lyra could not hide her admiration. "I didn't think humans could handle this," she admitted, her voice low. Ethan smiled. "We can when we pay attention and work together." Lyra's mind was racing. She had mocked him just days ago, thinking him weak and fragile. Now she realized that humans had a strength invisible to most beings. It was not muscle or advanced technology. It was adaptability, observation, and courage. As they exited the cavern, the sky above Viridian began to darken with the setting sun. Shadows stretched across the plateau, and the crystals glimmered in the fading light. Lyra walked beside Ethan, her steps slower than usual. She wanted to speak, to ask how he could predict danger so accurately, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded in quiet respect. For the first time, she saw humans not as fragile beings to be mocked, but as capable, intelligent, and resourceful allies. Ethan glanced at her, noticing the change. "You're thinking," he said softly. Lyra's violet eyes met his. She could not deny it. "Yes," she admitted. "Humans are different than I expected." Ethan smiled. "Different can be good." That night, as they set up camp once more, Lyra could not sleep. She stared at the glowing crystals around their camp, thinking about the day's events. The human had survived dangers she thought impossible. He had guided them through traps and taught her, silently, that strength came in many forms. For the first time, Lyra felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity that she could not ignore. She had mocked him, underestimated him, yet he had proven himself extraordinary. And deep down, she wondered what other secrets this human might hold. The morning light filtered through the jagged peaks of Viridian, casting a soft glow over the crystal-strewn plateau. Lyra woke first, stretching her long limbs as she glanced at Ethan. The human was already awake, scanning a small device that measured the energy levels of the crystals around their camp. "You never rest, do you?" Lyra asked, attempting to hide the curiosity in her voice. Ethan looked up and smiled. "Sleep is important, but preparation matters more. These crystals are unpredictable, and the Cavern of Echoes still holds secrets." Lyra frowned. She had learned from the day before that humans were patient and observant, but she still could not understand the depth of their abilities. Ethan's calm confidence unnerved her in a way she had never felt before. After a quick breakfast of nutrient bars, they packed their gear and began the journey toward the deeper sections of the plateau. Today, their goal was to map the energy currents around the Lumina crystal's location and understand how it influenced the surrounding environment. It was a task that required both intelligence and courage, as the plateau had unstable zones and hidden traps that could be deadly if miscalculated. Lyra led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the ground for unstable crystals. Ethan followed, moving carefully but deliberately. The deeper they ventured, the more unpredictable the terrain became. Crystals jutted out at strange angles, some glowing faintly, others radiating pulses of energy that made the ground vibrate beneath their feet. Suddenly, a tremor shook the plateau. Rocks and crystals shifted violently, sending shards tumbling down nearby slopes. Lyra jumped back instinctively, her tail curling around her for balance. She glanced at Ethan, expecting hesitation. But he reacted immediately, stepping into a narrow crevice to avoid a falling shard and signaling her to follow. "You're fast," Lyra muttered, surprised. Humans were not supposed to be this quick in emergencies. Ethan shook his head. "Not fast, observant. Timing is everything." Lyra's pride flared. She had been trained to react instinctively, yet this human seemed to anticipate danger before it happened. It was unnerving, but she could not deny it was impressive. They continued, carefully navigating the unstable zones. As they moved, Ethan began to notice subtle patterns in the vibrations of the crystals and the echoes in the plateau. His device detected energy surges, but it was his intuition, the way he instinctively understood the rhythm of the plateau, that allowed them to move safely through the most dangerous areas. Lyra's curiosity grew. "How do you know where to step?" she asked quietly, almost to herself. Ethan glanced at her. "I'm paying attention. To the ground, the sounds, the light, everything matters. You notice patterns even if you don't realize it. Humans just learn to read them naturally." Lyra frowned. She had always relied on training and instinct, yet Ethan seemed to have an ability beyond training, a natural skill that allowed him to survive where others might fail. She felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. As they approached a narrow canyon, The air grew colder and the hum of the crystals intensified. A thin mist rose from fissures in the ground, carrying a faint electrical charge that made the hairs on Lyra's arms stand on end. She had traversed this canyon before, but it was treacherous. One wrong step could trigger a collapse. Lyra led cautiously, her eyes scanning for weak points. Ethan followed, observing her movements closely. He noticed small shifts in her posture, subtle changes in her breathing. Without speaking, he adjusted his steps to match hers, providing silent guidance when necessary. Suddenly, a section of the canyon floor cracked beneath them. Lyra leapt back instinctively, but Ethan acted faster. He grabbed a sturdy crystal protrusion and pulled her to safety just as the ground beneath them crumbled. "You," Lyra stammered, heart racing. "How did you know it would break?" Ethan shrugged, a calm smile on his face. "I didn't. I just noticed the small cracks and vibrations before they became dangerous. Sometimes it's about predicting what's likely to happen, not just reacting." Lyra's violet eyes widened. Humans had a way of perceiving things she had never learned. It was more than observation. It was intuition, combined with careful calculation. She had mocked him before, thinking him weak and fragile, but now she realized he possessed a hidden strength that few could match. The canyon led them to a vast underground chamber, larger than any Lyra had seen. The walls were lined with massive crystals, pulsing with energy in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. At the center floated a cluster of lumina crystals, larger than the ones they had collected before. Their light bathed the chamber in a serene, yet powerful glow. Lyra approached the crystals, her hands itching to touch them, but she stopped herself. Something in the air felt different. The energy here was stronger, more volatile. One wrong move could trigger a surge that would destroy the entire chamber. Ethan studied the crystals carefully, using both his device and his intuition. "These crystals are linked," he said softly. "They're not just energy sources, they respond to movement, sound, and even thought patterns. If we're not careful, we could set off a chain reaction." Lyra's eyes widened. She had trained for dangerous environments, but she had never encountered crystals that reacted to thought and intention. She looked at Ethan, realizing that his calm confidence was not luck. He understood things she did not, sensing patterns in the energy that were invisible to her. As they prepared to collect a sample, the chamber trembled violently. Small shards of crystal floated in the air, suspended by energy surges. Lyra froze, unsure of what to do. Ethan acted immediately. He extended his hands, moving slowly but deliberately, guiding their movements. "Step lightly, move with the rhythm of the chamber," he instructed. Lyra hesitated, then followed. She matched her steps to his movements, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath her feet. Slowly, carefully, they approached the central crystal cluster. Ethan detached a small fragment with precise movements, ensuring the main structure remained intact. When the task was complete, Lyra exhaled in relief. I didn't think we could do it," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan smiled. "We could because we worked together. Observation, patience, and understanding, that's more important than strength alone." Lyra's mind raced. Humans were not the fragile, weak beings she had mocked. They had a hidden strength, a combination of intuition, patience, and adaptability that made them formidable in ways she had never imagined. As they left the chamber, a sudden tremor shook the cavern. Rocks and crystals fell around them, but Ethan's instincts guided them safely through the chaos. Lyra followed closely, her trust in him growing with every step. Outside, the sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds. A storm was approaching, and the plateau would become even more dangerous. Lyra set up a temporary shelter, her hands moving quickly, but her mind kept returning to Ethan. She had underestimated him, mocked him, and yet he had survived dangers that would have defeated many trained aliens. "You're different," she said quietly, almost to herself. Ethan looked up, curious. "Different how?" Lyra hesitated, then admitted, "You see things before they happen. You understand patterns. You survive when others would fail. You're extraordinary." Ethan's eyes softened. "Humans adapt. We notice things others miss. We don't always rely on strength, but on understanding. That's how we survive." Lyra's pride fought against the admission, but she could not deny it. She had mocked him, yet now she saw the truth. Humans were strong in ways that were invisible, subtle, and powerful. She felt a strange mix of admiration and respect, emotions she had rarely experienced before. That night, As the storm raged outside, Lyra lay beside the glowing crystals, thinking about the day's events. The human she had once mocked had revealed a hidden power, not one of muscles or weapons, but of mind, intuition, and courage. For the first time, Lyra realized that underestimating humans could be a grave mistake. Their strength was not always visible, but it was real, formidable, and perhaps even greater than many aliens could imagine. And deep down, she knew that their journey was only beginning. The plateau held more secrets, more dangers, and more challenges. But with the human by her side, she felt a strange sense of hope, curiosity, and excitement. Tomorrow, they would face the unknown together. And Lyra, the alien girl who had mocked him, would finally begin to understand the true power of humans. The storm had passed, leaving the crystal plateau glistening under the soft light of Viridian's twin suns. Rain had polished the jagged rocks and intensified the glow of the energy crystals, making the landscape appear magical, yet dangerous. Lyra stepped out from their temporary shelter, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. Ethan was already outside, studying the patterns in the scattered crystals. He crouched beside a cluster of small glowing shards, noting their position and movement. "The storm changed the energy flows," he said calmly. "Some areas are more unstable than before." Lyra frowned. "More unstable? You mean more dangerous?" She was still adjusting to the way humans could remain calm in situations that made even experienced aliens nervous. Ethan stood and smiled faintly. "Dangerous, yes, but also predictable if we pay attention." Lyra shook her head, though she could not hide the growing respect in her expression. Humans were remarkable. They saw patterns others missed and reacted before events became threats. Yesterday had been proof, but today, she realized, would test them even more. Their mission was to map the influence of the Lumina crystal across the plateau. This meant traversing regions that had never been explored, areas filled with unstable energy crystals, sudden chasms, and volatile terrain. Many explorers had entered these zones but had never returned. Lyra led the way, moving quickly yet carefully. Ethan followed, matching her pace and observing every subtle change in the environment. As they approached a narrow ridge, the ground vibrated beneath them, sending a tremor through the plateau. Lyra froze. "Watch out!" she shouted. Ethan had already reacted. He grabbed a sturdy crystal protrusion, holding himself steady while guiding Lyra to safety. Below them, the ridge cracked, sending shards falling into a deep chasm. Lyra's breath caught. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan smiled, calm as ever. "Observation, patterns, anticipation. Humans notice what others overlook." Lyra's pride bristled. She had always relied on her instincts and training, yet here was a human, a being she had mocked, saving them both. She could not deny it, he was extraordinary. As they continued, the terrain grew more treacherous. Jagged rocks jutted out at impossible angles, and the energy crystals pulsed in unpredictable rhythms. Even Lyra, skilled and agile, felt her confidence tested. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the plateau. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. "Did you see that?" Ethan nodded. "Something's coming." From the rocks emerged a group of alien scavengers, their armor jagged and their weapons designed to harvest crystals quickly. They had been tracking the energy fluctuations from the Lumina crystal and intended to take the crystals by force. Lyra's first instinct was to attack. Her tail lashed behind her and her claws flexed, but Ethan raised a hand. "Wait," he said calmly. "We can use the environment." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan pointed to the unstable ridge. "The crystals respond to vibration and movement. If we create controlled disturbances, we can slow them down and protect ourselves without direct combat." Lyra hesitated. She had always relied on speed and strength, not subtle strategy, but Ethan's calm confidence was persuasive. She nodded. "Fine, show me." Together, they worked in sync. Ethan directed Lyra to tap certain crystals, causing small energy pulses. The pulses triggered vibrations in the ridge, creating obstacles that slowed the scavengers and forced them to retreat temporarily. Lyra was amazed. The human's plan was simple yet brilliant. Strength was not needed. Understanding and teamwork were enough to control the battlefield. The scavengers regrouped, more cautious now. Lyra realized that brute force alone would not defeat them. She looked at Ethan, seeing his calm determination. "We need to move," she said. Ethan nodded. "Follow me." He led her through a network of narrow tunnels, each step carefully calculated. The scavengers followed, but Ethan's anticipation of their movements allowed them to stay ahead. When a tunnel began to collapse, Ethan's quick thinking created a safe path using loose crystal shards to stabilize the floor. Lyra's respect for him grew with every action. He was not just surviving, he was leading. Humans, she realized, had a unique combination of patience, intelligence, and adaptability that could overcome obstacles even the strongest aliens struggled with. Finally, they reached a large chamber, deeper than any they had explored. In the center floated a massive cluster of lumina crystals, radiating intense energy. The scavengers were close, but Ethan had a plan. "Stay behind me," he instructed. "We'll use the crystal energy." Lyra watched as he carefully positioned crystals to create a barrier of pulsing energy. The light reflected off the walls, forming a shimmering shield. When the scavengers entered, they were slowed, confused by the unexpected energy patterns. Lyra could hardly believe it. The human had turned the environment itself into a defense mechanism. You're incredible," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "We work together, that's what makes us strong." The scavengers, realizing they could not breach the energy barrier, retreated. Lyra felt a rush of exhilaration. She had faced many dangers, but she had never seen such precise strategy in action. The human beside her had not just survived, he had outsmarted their enemies. When the chamber was secure, Lyra turned to him. I didn't know humans could do this," she admitted. Ethan shook his head. "It's not about being human. It's about noticing what others miss, planning carefully, and staying calm under pressure. Anyone can learn it, but humans often rely on it naturally." Lyra nodded slowly, her pride tempered by respect. "You've taught me something important today," she said. "Strength isn't always about muscle or weapons. Sometimes it's about understanding and timing." Ethan's eyes softened. "Exactly. And working together makes it even stronger." They spent the rest of the day mapping the energy currents around the crystals, careful not to trigger another reaction. Lyra followed Ethan's lead, noticing patterns she had never seen before. She realized that humans could teach aliens new ways of thinking, new strategies, and new ways to survive. As night fell, they set up camp in a safe area, the glowing crystals illuminating the dark. Lyra sat quietly, reflecting on the events of the day. The human she had once mocked had not only survived, but had also saved her life multiple times. His calm intelligence, patience, and intuition had turned potential disaster into victory. "You're different than I expected," Lyra admitted softly, almost to herself. Ethan glanced at her. "Different can be good," he said gently. Lyra smiled faintly. She could feel a shift within herself. Respect had replaced mockery, curiosity had replaced doubt, and admiration had replaced disbelief. She realized that humans, underestimated by many, possessed strengths that were invisible, subtle, and powerful. The next morning, the duo prepared to continue their journey deeper into the plateau. The lumina crystals held secrets yet to be discovered, and other dangers lurked in the uncharted areas. But Lyra felt a new confidence. With Ethan by her side, she knew they could face anything. As they walked side by side, Lyra spoke, her voice calm but determined. "I used to think humans were weak. I was wrong. You've shown me that strength isn't always visible, and now I want to learn from you." Ethan smiled, appreciating the change in her attitude. "Then we'll face the challenges together. That's how we succeed." And so the alien girl and the human ambassador moved forward. An unexpected alliance formed. Together, they would navigate the dangers of Viridian, uncover the secrets of the lumina crystals, and prove that true strength came from intelligence, courage, and partnership. For Lyra, the lessons of the day were clear. Mockery and judgment could be replaced with respect and understanding. And for the first time, she felt that humans, the very species she had once doubted, were capable of greatness beyond what most aliens could imagine. The plateau was vast, the crystals mysterious, and the dangers real. But for Lyra and Ethan, the alliance they had formed today was stronger than any threat they might face. Together they were unstoppable. The sun rose over Viridian's crystal plateau, painting the jagged peaks in gold and green. The air was still, almost eerily quiet, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Lyra and Ethan stood on a high ridge, overlooking the valley below where the lumina crystals pulsed with quiet energy. After days of exploration, the duo had mapped much of the plateau, retrieved several crystal samples, and survived hazards that would have defeated most other explorers. Yet today, a greater challenge awaited them. A distant rumble shook the plateau. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. That sound, it's not natural, she said. Something is coming. Ethan crouched beside her, scanning the valley with his device. You're right. The energy readings spike suddenly in several areas. Whoever or whatever is coming there after the crystals. Lyra's instincts flared. Then we stop them, now. Ethan shook his head. We don't have to fight blindly. We've learned their patterns before. We can use what we know to protect the crystals and ourselves. Lyra considered his words. She had once mocked humans for their size and apparent weakness. Now she realized that strength did not always lie in muscles or weaponry. Intelligence, observation, and timing were just as powerful. Together, they descended into the valley. The wind whistled through jagged crystal spires, carrying the faint hum of energy. Shadows moved in the distance, revealing the alien scavenger faction they had faced before. This time, the group was larger, better armed, and more determined. Lyra's tail lashed behind her. They won't leave without the crystals. Are you ready? Ethan nodded calmly. Yes, follow my lead. The two moved strategically through the valley, avoiding unstable crystal clusters and setting traps using the environment. Ethan guided Lyra to areas where energy vibrations could be amplified to create barriers and confuse the scavengers. Step here, then there, he instructed, pointing to safe zones among the unstable crystals. The energy pulses will slow them down. Lyra followed, impressed by his precision. The human's intuition had grown even stronger during their time together. He could sense patterns in the energy and movement that even she could not detect. The scavengers advanced, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. As they approached, Lyra and Ethan triggered a series of energy pulses from the crystals. Pulses shot upward, creating shimmering walls that blocked the path and slowed the enemies. Lyra could hardly believe it. The human had transformed the plateau itself into a defensive fortress. She realized that humans' hidden strengths, patience, perception, and adaptability could overcome even the most dangerous foes. The scavengers adjusted quickly, trying to find a path through the energy barriers. Ethan's eyes flicked to subtle changes in their movement. Left side now, he shouted. Lyra followed instantly, her steps precise and deliberate. Together, they moved through a maze of crystal energy, leading the scavengers into unstable zones. With each misstep the enemies made, crystals cracked and pulsed dangerously, forcing them to retreat further. You're amazing, Lyra whispered, almost in awe. I've never seen anyone move like this. Ethan glanced at her. It's not about being amazing. It's about observing, predicting, and reacting. Anyone can do it if they focus. Lyra shook her head, smiling faintly. She could feel her respect for humans growing. You've taught me that strength isn't always visible. It's not just muscle or weapons. Sometimes it's in the mind. The battle continued, tension mounting with every step. The scavengers were clever, but Ethan's strategies outmatched them at every turn. He anticipated their moves, directing Lyra to manipulate energy pulses and terrain hazards with precise timing. Finally, the scavengers, exhausted and disoriented, retreated completely. The valley was quiet again, the crystals glowing softly as if returning to their natural rhythm. Lyra exhaled deeply, her body trembling slightly from adrenaline and awe. You did it, she said, turning to Ethan. We did it, together. Ethan smiled faintly. Yes, together. For a moment they stood in silence, overlooking the valley. The danger had passed, but the lesson lingered. Lyra had begun this journey mocking the human beside her, convinced he was weak. Now she saw the truth clearly. Humans were remarkable. Not because of brute strength, but because of courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Lyra's pride softened, replaced by admiration. I misjudged you, she admitted, her voice quiet. I thought humans were small, weak, unremarkable, but you've proven me wrong. Ethan shook his head gently. It's not about proving anyone wrong, it's about showing what we can do when we work together. Lyra nodded slowly. For the first time, she felt true respect for another species, not just tolerance. She had learned that strength could come in many forms, and that appearances could be deceiving. As they collected the final crystal samples, Lyra reflected on the journey. She had seen humans underestimated countless times, yet Ethan had shown her that true power lay not in size or weaponry, but in intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the plateau. Lyra turned to Ethan, her violet eyes bright with understanding. You've changed how I see humans, she said softly. Not just you, all humans. I think they're capable of more than most aliens realize. Ethan smiled faintly. Humans have potential. We may be small, but we notice what others miss. We survive when others fail, and sometimes we even inspire. Lyra laughed lightly, a sound mixed with relief and amazement. Inspire? I never thought a human could inspire me. Ethan shrugged, modest as ever. It's not about being heroic. It's about understanding, courage, and working with what you have. As night fell, the stars sparkled over the plateau. Lyra and Ethan set up camp near a safe cluster of crystals, their energy casting a soft glow on the surroundings. Lyra stared up at the sky, thinking about how far they had come. She realized that humans were underestimated not because they lacked strength, but because their greatest qualities were invisible. Courage, patience, adaptability, and intuition, these were their hidden weapons, and they were powerful beyond measure. Lyra turned to Ethan, her voice calm but sincere. I mocked you at the beginning. I thought you were weak, but now I see the truth. Humans are strong in ways I never imagined. You've taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Ethan's eyes softened. I'm glad, and I've learned from you too. Aliens have skills humans don't. Together we can accomplish anything. Lyra smiled faintly. Yes, together. The next morning they prepared to leave the plateau. The Lumina crystals had been studied, samples collected, and the mysteries of the area mapped. The dangerous zones were no longer threats, thanks to their combined efforts. As they descended the final ridge, Lyra glanced at Ethan with newfound admiration. You've shown me that appearances can be deceiving, she said. I'll never underestimate a human again. Ethan nodded. And I'll never underestimate an alien either. Strength comes in many forms, and respect comes from understanding. The journey back was calm. The plateau stretched endlessly before them, shimmering under the sunlight. Lyra felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not just from completing their mission, but from the lessons learned along the way. She realized that humans, often underestimated by other species, could achieve greatness through intelligence, patience, and courage. And she knew that the alliance they had formed would endure far beyond the plateau. When they finally reached their ship, ready to return to the space station, Lyra turned to Ethan. You've changed more than just this mission, she said. You've changed my view of humans forever. I respect you and them, Ethan smiled. And you've changed my view too. We've both learned something important. Lyra nodded, her heart light with understanding. For the first time, she felt that humans, small, underestimated, and often mocked, were capable of extraordinary feats. Not through sheer strength, but through courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt to any situation. The ship lifted off, carrying them away from the crystal plateau. Lyra looked out at the glimmering terrain below, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and respect. The human she had mocked had proven himself remarkable, and in doing so had revealed the hidden potential of his entire species. As they traveled through the stars, Lyra turned to Ethan once more. Thank you, she said sincerely, for everything. Ethan smiled gently. No thanks needed, we did it together. Lyra's violet eyes shone with understanding. She knew the lesson would stay with her forever. Humans were not weak. They were extraordinary, often underestimated, and capable of greatness that few could see at first glance. And in that moment, as the stars stretched endlessly around them, Lyra felt a profound respect, not just for the human beside her, but for all of humanity. She had begun this journey mocking him, but she would end it knowing that humans, underestimated by many, were stronger than anyone had imagined. Together, they traveled onward, ready for the next adventure, confident that the bond they had formed, alien and human, learning from each other, was unbreakable. The universe was vast, full of challenges and mysteries, but with courage, intelligence, and trust, there was nothing they could not face.